The Ruy Lopez opening traps arise from the moves e4, d5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and then bishop to b5. This opening is played by everyone. Today, we will explore some common tactics and tricks to gain an advantage and secure a quick victory. So, without further ado, let's dive in. In this position, the standard move is knight to f6. After this, you can castle, luring black into capturing the undefended pawn on e4. If black takes the bait, you can continue with rook to e1, applying pressure along the e-file to the pieces occupying that line. Although black can escape with precise play, there are pitfalls to be aware of. For instance, a seemingly strong and natural move for black to defend the e4 is pawn to d5. This move defends the knight, opens up the bishop, and strengthens black's control of the center, all seemingly excellent benefits from a single move. However, the move pawn to d5 is actually a losing mistake if handled properly. Here's how you can capitalize on it. First, play pawn to d3, challenging the knight's position in the center. Once the knight retreats to any square, you can then capture the pawn on a5, gaining a decisive advantage. At this point, black finds themselves defenseless. First, your rook on e1 is in an excellent position, ready to unleash discovered checks as your knight on a5 prepares to move. Additionally, your bishop on b5 is pinning the knight on c6, creating a double threat. Together with your knight on e5, you are attacking the knight on c6 twice, and black has no way to escape both threats. For example, if black captures your undefended bishop on b5, you can respond with knight to c6, delivering a discovered check to black's king. On the next move, you will capture black's queen, making it a brilliant combination. Knowing that the move pawn to d5 leads to a losing position for black, they might instead try retreating the knight to f6 to safety. In this case, you can confidently capture the pawn on e5, maintaining a strong position. Once again, you can make effective use of your rook on e1, which supports your play. After black recaptures, here's the key point. Instead of recapturing with the rook, you play a surprising move that catches black off guard. Despite their last move seeming perfectly natural, it turns out to be another losing mistake. Instead of taking immediately, you play pawn to d4. Here's why this works. The knight on e5 cannot move because it's pinned to the king. Your plan is to capture the knight on e5, not with the rook, but with the pawn. If you do this, you also threaten the other knight on f6, which then runs out of good squares to retreat to. Ultimately, the knight on f6 is forced back to its starting position, leaving black in a completely lost position. For example, if black tries to counterattack by playing pawn to c6 to threaten your bishop, you can simply ignore this and capture the knight on e5. Black's position collapses, and you secure a decisive advantage. As you can see, black's position is completely cramped and underdeveloped, making it easy for you to launch an attack. If black moves the knight away, their position remains weak. On the other hand, if they attempt to capture your bishop, you can simply recapture the knight. This exchange isn't as harmless as it seems because your rook on e1 becomes a devastating force. It delivers a discovered check, leaving black in a losing position. The only way for black to block the check is by playing bishop to b7, but you can capture it with either the rook or the pawn. In doing so, you attack the king and emerge a piece up, making the win straightforward. There are multiple ways to capitalize on this advantage. For instance, you can play queen to d6, preparing another discovered check on the next move. If black's king attempts to escape, you can deliver a beautiful finishing blow with bishop to h6, securing a decisive victory. You continue to pressure black relentlessly, leaving them with no escape. Your attacks overwhelm their position, and after black plays any move, you follow up with queen to g3, swinging your attack to the king side and finishing the game in style. Now, moving on to the next trap. The trap begins with you playing pawn to a6, forcing white to retreat their bishop to safety, which is the main response. You then continue with pawn to d6, a standard development move. However, this move is also a provocative one. It opens the diagonal, pinning your knight to the king and tempting white to exploit this with pawn to d4. At first glance, white's position looks very advantageous as they threaten to either capture the pawn on d5 or advance further. The knight is pinned to the king, adding to the pressure. It seems like black is in serious trouble. However, here's how you can turn the tables. First, play pawn to b5, breaking the pin. As white retreats their bishop, you begin trading everything on d4 strategically. Start with knight takes d4, forcing white to recapture. Then continue exchanging pieces as the goal is to clear the center. At this stage, white's position might still seem solid. They have good development and control, but this is deceptive. Black can now play pawn to c5, launching a counterattack. This move gains a tempo by attacking white's queen, forcing it to retreat. No matter where the queen moves, you can then push the c-pawn forward, trapping white's bishop on b3. This clever sequence turns what seemed like a strong position for white into a winning game for black. This trap is known as the Noah's Ark trap, an ancient tactic that surprisingly remains very effective even today. However, there's an additional nuance you should be aware of. White may try to move their queen forward, creating two simultaneous threats, either to capture the pawn on f7 or to take the rook on a8. In this case, you can neutralize both threats by playing bishop to a6. This move not only attacks the queen, but also covers the diagonal and ensures your queen defends the rook on a8. With this single move, you solve all of black's immediate problems. White may attempt a final check, but you can calmly drop your bishop back to block it. If white's queen returns to d5 to renew the threat, you can safely play pawn to c4, trapping white's bishop. This sequence leaves you with a decisive material advantage and a winning position. The next trap is quite difficult to anticipate. After black plays the standard move pawn to a6, your bishop retreats. Black continues with knight to f6 and you castle. So far, both sides are simply developing their pieces. If black continues developing with a move like bishop to c5, a common setup in the Italian game, you shock your opponent by playing knight takes c5. At first glance, this move looks like a blunder since the knight was defended and black can seemingly capture it without consequence. However, you then play pawn to d4, regaining your material with added advantage. This tactical sacrifice often leaves your opponents completely confused, leading them to make poor moves that quickly result in their downfall. Alternatively, others may try moves like knight takes f4 to complicate the position, but in such cases, you can ignore these captures and instead play a move like rook to e1, intensifying the pressure and driving the game into chaos. For example, some players may instinctively try bishop takes pawn on d4, only to realize too late that this is a mistake. After you recapture with the queen, you emerge with a winning position. While less experienced players might fall into these traps easily, even seasoned opponents can find themselves in trouble if they don't respond correctly. By move 8, you have full control of the center and two powerful bishops dominating the board, putting immense pressure on black's position. If the knight on e5 moves, your pawn is ready to advance, kicking away the knight on f6 and maintaining your strong attack. Your strategy is straightforward: keep advancing and attacking, as black has little to counter with. For instance, if the knight retreats to c6 in an attempt to counterattack, you can simply eliminate it. Afterward, you can continue your attack with natural, aggressive moves like pawn to a5 or bishop to g5, further exposing black's weaknesses. If you play pawn to a5, forcing the knight to move, you can then follow up with queen to g4. You are now aiming at the pawn while still renewing the threat of your bishop moving to g5, which targets black's queen. Black is in a tough spot here. For example, if black castles, there's a common tactical pattern that can be exploited. You can play bishop to h6 regardless of the pawn, since the bishop is now attacking the king. This move puts immense pressure on black, and in many cases leads to a winning position. At this point, black has no choice but to give up their rook, and you continue with your attack, maintaining a wealth of attacking ideas. Given your strong position, you should be well on your way to winning this game, while not every game will end in victory. Thanks for watching. If enjoyed this video, then like and subscribe. See you in the next one.